All right, Big Man, today is Friday. It is February 18th. Welcome to the Dog Walk, presented by Barstool Sports. Before we get into True Crime Friday today, I do want to talk to you about ChevyDriveChicago.com because they got a great deal for you. Go over to ChevyDriveChicago.com right now, especially if you're a Blackhawks fan, or really if you're just a Chicago sports fan. You're going to want a jersey of a legend. I mean, it's just a fact. And that legend is Patrick Kane, because ChevyDriveChicago.com is a special giveaway that's just for you. Your local Chevy dealers are giving away one Patrick Kane signed jersey, and entering is easy. All you have to do is go to ChevyDriveChicago.com to enter to win. And if you're looking to drive what Kane and Taze drive, see your local Chevy dealer today. Or what's great about Chevy as well, if you got to get the brakes tuned up, if you got to get the battery in check, if the tires need some work, Chevy is right there for you. You go on there, you type in wherever you live, and it sends you to your closest dealer. It's a nice, way to, you don't want to go to a place where that's not recognized. It really doesn't know what they're doing. Chevy dealers know what they're doing, so go do that. ChevyDriveChicago.com and grab a Chevy. Grab a Chevy. It's that easy. Silverado, Colorado, whatever it is, go get Chevy. ChevyDriveChicago.com. All right, Allie, how are you today?
Okay, good. I've been holding down Chicago while you've been out
all over the place,
traveling coast to coast.
Yep.
Been holding down the fort.
Good.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Today we are covering a case that was a listener suggestion. It is Jalik, Keane, and Mikaela Conley. So Jalik and Michaela attended high school together. They were good friends. They, obviously in high school you bond, you have those people that sometimes are friends for life. Keane graduated actually in 2015. And at that time, Conley was still a sophomore. So she was still in school, but they stayed friends. And fast forward to 2018, after, Michaela had graduated, Keane had been graduated for a couple of years. Jalik Keane was 22, Mikaela Conley was 19. Conley, being the good friend that she was, had agreed to pick Keane up from the Logan International Airport in Boston on May 31st, 2018. Keane was actually flying back from Europe that day, and because he had been spending some time over playing football in Serbia. So he went abroad. He did his football thing. He was coming back, and Michaela was like, "Yeah, I'll scoop you from the airport." Keane and Conley arrived back in Bar Harbor actually around about 1 a.m. So he got in pretty late. She drove him back. Being that it was around 1 a.m., this would now be June 1st. Now, instead of just like dropping him off, calling it a night, they decided that they were going to hang out a little bit, get some fresh air, take a walk around. So they walked to this playground at Connors Emerson School, which was just across the street from Conley's mother's house where she was living. So essentially they got back home and then they're like, let's hang out a little longer. Let's go hang out on this playground, I guess. So they walked across the street, and that was essentially some of Mikaela Conley's last movements. Later that day, so other than those two, obviously they were not interacting with anybody else. They didn't actually go home, so they didn't interact with Michaela's mom, nothing like that. They just kind of went off on their own. So it's essentially the middle of the night now. Later that day, so later that morning, when Michaela's mom realizes she's missing, she reported to the police that Michaela was missing. She couldn't find her, and this search ensued. Now, Michaela, after they went to the playground, Michaela never came home, but Jalik did. And so when Michaela was reported missing, this search ensues, and he joined the search. He was like, "Yeah, of course, we're good friends. I can't believe she's missing."
Picked me up from the airport.
Yeah, she picked me up from the airport. Let me help you look for her. The concerned friend kind of thing. Now, like you said, since she picked him up from the airport, they were just together very recently. So Jalik, his story was that he picked her up, or she picked him up, took him home. They parted ways. Like it was late, and he was worried. A very odd reason. Like, so your friend picks you up from the airport, drops you off, and he was like, it was late, so I was worried that she fell and hit her head. Like, what?
Yeah, it's odd.
Yeah.
Seems out of left field.
Yeah, super fishy. He also told people he was worried that this all took place, that she like fell and hit her head somewhere down, like near downtown Bar Harbor, which was near the shore. So he was like, if she was near the shore, she could have fallen in, like got carried away by the water.
Unless because it was late, she was like delirious or something because she was tired. But
yeah, but like
that doesn't sound like it's that.
No, it's just a very strange, seems like a kind of like a panicky on the fly story that he just like felt he needed to come up with.
Sure, yeah.
And at no point was there like oh yeah, we went out, hung out downtown. Like, yeah, it's like that just kind of came out of nowhere. Like, oh, maybe she got swept away by the shore, hit her head, fell, whatever. And it's like, okay. So that same day, it didn't take long to find her, unfortunately. Conley's body was found in this area of brush at the base of this hill that was right next to, surprise, surprise, the elementary school where they were hanging out the night before. Now, again, this wasn't broadcasted, that they were like, Keane had this other story. And so he was like, oh, definitely tried to smooth over it, definitely tried to like remove himself from the situation. So she was found at the base of this hill in this area of brush, so she wasn't, readily visible. Keane had been obviously strolling around this area the night before with Michaela. Mikaela Conley's body was found badly beaten. So it was very clear, right off the bat. It's not like she was like there for a long time and she had decayed, and not one of those situations. It was like maybe 24 hours tops, not even. So it was very clear right off the bat that she had met foul play, that something went amiss. This wasn't just she fell and hit her head and passed away from it. Now, Conley, again, so once they were examining her body, Conley had been beaten, she had been raped, and she had obviously been killed at the hands of somebody. I'm sure it's no surprise that this somebody was Jaliek. Now, her cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head and strangulation. So right off the bat, we know, based on similar cases that we've talked about with these kinds of causes of death, blunt force trauma to the head and strangulation, that's two different, you're combining two different things here. That's overkill. Strangulation is always a very personal cause of death, because you're obviously you're potentially doing it with your bare hands. It's probably one of the longer means.
Is it though? Because wouldn't it also just be like if this didn't do it, this would, if he did hit her over the head, if he was just like, hey, that didn't.
And then strangle her.
Yeah, that's my only opposite thinking on that. But
yeah, it could definitely be that, but it's still a very
for sure. In a lot of cases, I get your point. But,
yeah, it's still very personal. To be this is very morbid to say, but he could have hit her over the head again or whatever. It might have been a moment of panic. You just went towards strangling, but even then you're straight up using your bare hands to take somebody's life.
It's desperate almost.
Yeah.
Very
panicky.
Yes.
So again, surprise, surprise, Jaliek's DNA was found under Michaela's fingernails and inside her body. Keane was later arrested on June 4th for the murder and rape of Mikaela Conley. Now, Keane started to kind of piece together his story of events. He said the two of them went to the playground after she had picked him up. They had they had consensual sex. They got into an argument, and during which argument Michaela slapped and pushed Jalik. And then they went their separate ways, and he can't remember anything that happened after that. It's, again, very shady story. Like, oh, poor you, she slapped you, she pushed you, and then you just decided to go your separate ways, and you have no idea what happened after that. And somehow, ironically, she ended up dead. Obviously, the story was not catching any traction with the police. He stated that he had no recollection whatsoever of moving Michaela's body after she was deceased. So into that like brush area where she was found. He's like, I don't remember that. I have no recollection of that. It's like, okay. Then he was notified. Somebody made him aware that the school has security cameras. Again, this is 2018. This is not that long ago. The school had security cameras. And then Keane, once he was aware of that, started to change his story. He was like, well, then he must have moved her dead body into the brush after some random attack. Some random attacker like beat her and killed her. And so Keane must have been the one to come in and move her body.
Which makes no sense.
No sense at all. One, if that were the case, why didn't you try and save her? Why did you put her in the brush?
And then join a search party.
Yeah.
And act like you didn't know where she was.
Right.
So a lot of things aren't adding up.
Yeah. Not even a little bit. So on the cameras, on the school security cameras, you can see Michaela and Jalik on tape together with essentially like walking through the frame with Michaela like draped over Jalik's shoulder and kicking her feet. So think about like somebody like, throws you over their shoulder. She was like kicking to get down is what I'm picturing. It was also caught on video then later. So it didn't like frame for frame catch this whole thing going on. It, caught him, essentially holding her against her will, her fighting back. And then later on in the tape, it shows Keane or Jalik dragging Michaela's body towards the nearby wooded area where she was found. Pretty incriminating right then and there. Obviously, there's no one else in the tape. There's no like random attacker. The whole nine. That's not a thing. Now, after Keane had killed Michaela, like I said, it catches him a few minutes after moving the body into the like nearby wooded area, and then it catches him again coming over to this little like spigot that's near the school or on the playground that he was like washing his hands and feet. So, and then he went to like go get his phone because he must have left his phone somewhere on the grounds, and then went about his night. So it was almost like a B, C, gone kind of thing. Again, he's claiming, I don't remember any of this. Like, it must have been a random attacker. I have no recollection, yada, yada, yada. He really like put this sob story on himself so that people would just like, pity party for Jalik, poor victim. And later on in court, he's extremely narcissistic. Later on in court, he was like, again, still wanted people to feel bad for him. He was, started with the whole like, oh, she was slapping me and she pushed me and I don't have any recollection of this, yada, yada. And then he like pivoted the, pity party to be like, oh, well, I take full responsibility for her death, but I'm not the one who killed her. So like, what? You're like trying to be a hero or something?
Yeah.
Like trying to.
Like, he's saying like you put her in a situation for it to happen, so he takes responsibility, but I didn't do it. Like, is that what he was trying to say? I don't know.
So essentially he was like,
strange.
I'm taking, I take full responsibility for her death, but I'm not the one who killed her. So yeah, either like, I wasn't a good friend and like saved her or didn't like look out for her, or like well, I didn't do it, but since you guys are saying that I did it, and to give the family some closure, like it could have also been one of those kind of things to be like, I wasn't the one who did it, but I'll take the responsibility, you know?
Yeah.
Just again, super narcissistic. Even the prosecutor described Jalik as a narcissist and a devious and self-absorbed killer.
Wow.
Yeah. Like straight up said that to his face. So it was not lost.
Sounds warranted though.
Yeah. It was not lost on authority at any point of how, you know, unremorseful, lying, narcissistic, like that was blatantly obvious to authorities the entire time. Obviously, if like a prosecutor is obviously somebody who's, you know, upholding the law, fighting for whatever, and then they this is how they describe somebody is, it's pretty blunt. Like wow, you know. This prosecutor also stated that Jalik had shown this pattern of antisocial behavior for years, that this did not come out of left field. Keane did have this prior history of burglaries and thefts when he was a teen. So he was not a complete stranger to police. This he clearly had he got more dangerous over time. Like it wasn't, I don't know if it was a slip on the justice system's behalf where they were like kept giving him more chances in the hopes that, you know, let's not put him away for life kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or if it was like this just like was an escalation for him. Nobody saw it escalating to this degree kind of thing. This strikes me as, we always, you know, we've talked before about the like nature versus nurture situation of how like where this kind of like evil monstrosity comes from in a person. I think this is definitely a nurture situation, because it had been noted that Keane was like growing up, he was a victim of significant mental and physical abuse as a child, which authorities did state that was a factor in this case that played into why he turned out the way he did. It was kind of a collaboration of what he was a victim of growing up and as a child that made him into a killer. So I think it's a pretty clear like nurture case in this situation. Jalik was sentenced on September 11th, 2019. So am I doing math correctly? What, like a year and a couple months later?
Yep.
It's pretty quick for a case to move, especially a homicide. Some other cases we've talked about have moved like, you know, glacially slow.
Fast, yeah.
So this is a little over a year later. He was sentenced to 58 years in prison for murder, as well as an additional 30 years to be served concurrently for charges of gross sexual assault. So he got the 58 years for murder, 30 concurrent for sexual assault. I don't know how we got to 58. Like that seems like a very random number to me.
Arbitrary number, yeah.
It's not to say the prosecutors tried for a life sentence. Obviously he's a murderer. He's a narcissist. He's a dangerous human being. He poses a threat to society. Not to say that like in 58 years, I mean, in 58 years, he's definitely could still be alive. I mean, he'll be very old, but he could still has a chance of getting out.
And there was no type of a different relationship between them?
No,
like
not that I saw.
Yeah, and that's like the most maddening things about these is like what went wrong.
Yeah,
like she picked him up from the airport.
Right.
There's a favor being done, and like
right. My guess
hanging out, and then this happens at a park. Like what?
My guess was it had something to do with them like hooking up, and it went south very quickly because Jalik had stated like in his in one of the stories that he told, like, oh, we went to the playground, we had consensual sex. Like, he made sure to mention that, and it was noted in her by the medical examiner that she was beaten, raped, and killed.
She denied the advances though. Like, so,
right.
So you're right. So that could be something to do with that.
So and he got mad.
Yeah.
It went. It turned ugly.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if this would have been like before or after he was seen on camera with her like draped over his shoulder, like trying to get away from him. If that would have been like before or after he tried to make advances on her and she was, trying to get away from him, or she had already turned him down and then he was like, well, kind of started seeing red. I would be shocked if it didn't have something to do with that and just was like a snap that he went off, because like you said, she was doing him a favor. She picked him up. He had just gotten back from Europe, so I assume they hadn't seen each other in a while, like old friends catching up.
Yeah, I mean, you don't pick someone up from the airport that you don't like
late at night.
Yeah. Staying up to. That's brutal. 1922. That's too young. That's sad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in August of 2020, Jalik did try and appeal his conviction on the grounds of the trial being held too close to like the scene of the crime. I mean, like, I didn't get a fair and unbiased trial because it was, too close in location where people already had preconceived notions and whatever. And like, these are my peers and not random jurors kind of situation. He argued that the sentence was too long and that there were gaps in the evidence. Supreme Court was like, yeah, no, you can stay in jail. They upheld his conviction fully, and he's going to stay in there. Prosecutors were aiming for life. They struck a deal with his attorney. That's probably how we landed on this like random 58-year sentence. But I would be shocked if he didn't try and appeal again. He's got a couple left, but it sounds like Supreme Court is pretty set in stone to be like, yeah, there's not really a way around this one. Like, you did it. Literally, you did the crime, you do the time. So at least there was some justice behind it, and it was solved. It was solved pretty quickly to be able to give her family closure. And it was interesting though, because during the trial, like, Jalik's family was advocating basically like for him that he was a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, he's actually a good guy, like, blah, 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 blah. And like, where they all had like, they made all matching t-shirts and like, we're making kind of a scene about it, but it's also like, well, he killed somebody.
Yeah.
So
you can't defend that.
Yeah. Like, I don't know how you defend that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, this one came in as a listener suggestion. It wasn't one that I heard of before, so I appreciate all the listener suggestions. And like I said, I'm glad there was justice that was sought. Hopefully something.
Yeah, hopefully hopefully closure, like you said. And and then that's the theories we throw around. Obviously, that's just what we're alleging or whatnot, just so everyone knows about that.
Yeah.
But like you said too, what's your Instagram account too? If you guys want to hear us cover a case, where they could hit you up at?
True Crime Alley.
True Crime Alley on Instagram. So go do that. That's a sad case. Super, super young.
Yeah,
super
very
tragic.
Very young.
But all right then, Allie. Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening. That's it for this week. We'll be back on Monday. We'll see you then.